Thank you all for your time in coming today and for your efforts that you've put into your testimony. I want to thank Ms. Pletka as well, in particular, for her defense of freedom. I don't know if you consider yourself a neocon or not. I am quite sure that you're not a socialist who grew up in New York City in the 1940s and 1950s, which some of the historically limited knowledge colleagues of ours might not know is the original term for neoconservatives. I could call you a Reagan Republican, or I could call you a Truman Democrat or a Kennedy Democrat. But I'll just let you define yourself as you choose. I'm worried that the two most likely outcomes in Syria right now are both highly unacceptable to the West and the United States. Assad remaining in power, or a al-Nusra-led rebel front toppling Assad and taking power. Could we just go down the row and get your assessment of which one of those two is more likely and which one would be worse for U.S. and Western interests? Mr. Bodrin.
Thank you so much. The idea of no good guys in Syria, I think, is unhelpful. In the past, the United States, in World War II,
No, I am aware that there are good guys, and I wish that we had supported the good guys earlier. Right. But given the state of play right now,
in terms of strategic prioritization, I think the defeat of Assad and all the structures of Iranian influence in Syria is the top priority. Then you develop another strategy to mitigate against whatever other undesirables that can emerge. I do believe that the inherent fissures in Syria's Sunni community, its regionalism and its internal divisions, are going to mitigate against the ability of Nusra to take over in the sense that we consider it would.
Is that assessment where the Gulf states stand? Let's topple Syria, let's deal Iran a blow, and we'll worry about what happens afterwards?
Yes, sir, and I think that they also have their own channels, not to al-Nusra. They have a multiple, to the tribes, to businessmen, and so on and so forth, that I think to just sort of condense everything to Jabhat al-Nusra is misleading.
Ms. Pletka, what's more likely, what's worse?
First, Mr. Cotton, thank you. I'd like to refer to myself as an American. What's worse is clearly Assad's return to power. I think that the balance has tipped slightly toward him in the last few weeks, and that's very worrisome. The problem is that I think that the premise that many bring to this is that somehow we can get back to status quo ante. Assad looks a lot better now that we see what the possible outcome is. And the answer is there's never going to be another solid Syria under Assad, whether you liked it or not. We need to get rid of him, and we need to have a follow-on policy. It's that worries me most, frankly. We can talk a lot about arming, who to arm, whether we can vet, but what we do after Assad falls is going to be decisive. If we abdicate our responsibility, if we forget about places, as we've forgotten about parts of Libya, frankly, then we end up with a situation in which bad guys control half the country, and we cannot allow that to happen.
Dr. Alterman.
I think there's a possibility of some sort of midpoint where Assad has control over part of the country, other forces have control over another part of the country. We try to make the other parts of the country successful. I think the key to me is not thinking about this as a moment of decision, not thinking about this as the point in which we decide whether this is won or lost, but the changes in the Arab world are going to take more than a decade to work themselves out. The changes in Syria are going to take themselves more than a decade to work out. I think we have to take a more incremental approach, preserving our interests, trying to keep radicals from seizing more control, putting ourselves in a better position so that when changes continue to work through the Arab world, we can continue to try to use them to an advantage to further American values, American interests, and, very importantly, the interests of the very vulnerable neighbors who are all allies of the United States.
Thank you. Ms. Pletka, I want to discuss now an op-ed that you and General Keane have written about a no-fly zone. Most people, when they think about a no-fly zone, think about what we had in Iraq in the 1990s or elsewhere where aircraft are fighting aircraft if they're in the air. There's also effective ways to make a no-fly zone, for example, destroying airfields or support facilities. Can you estimate how many airfields Syria has today? Not a precise number, but are we talking dozens, scores, hundreds?
I think the total is 25 or so, but a lot of them are decommissioned. A lot of them are outside the control of the Assad regime.
There's 25 airfields in all of Syria.
Between civilian and military, something approximately around that number. But a lot of them are in the east and the north of the country. They've fallen outside the regime's control or have been decommissioned even in the past.
And so 25, even if let's say it was 50, that's both airfields that Syria's fixed-wing aircraft would have to use, but also any fixed-wing aircraft coming in from Iran for resupply as well.
As well as Russia.
As well as Russia. And can you estimate if it would take the United States military with our NATO allies minutes or hours to destroy those airfields?
I never want to put myself forward as a military expert. You of all people should know that I'm not one. General Keane, working with him and discussing this with people who've done serious analysis, believe that this is a matter of, that this is an operation that would certainly not take more than days. But we need to underscore that the Syrians will be able to repair these airfields. This is something we will need to keep at. If we make a commitment, we will need to keep at it. It won't be cost-free, and we do have the best capabilities in the region. Yes, the Arab League should join us. Yes, NATO, especially Turkey, should join us. At the end of the day, however, we do still, at this moment, have the best capabilities.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you all for your time and your insights.